Joining us today is Liz Priestley. How you doing this fine day?
I'm doing great, Aaron. How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for being here. Uh,
Absolutely.
I have been really, really impressed with the body of work you've done on stage, and geography has prevented me from actually seeing you. But I'm looking forward to seeing this movie you have coming out, Concrete Cowboy.
hmm
The concept is fantastic. So, how did you get into that?
Into the movie? Well, it's interesting. My manager gave me a call one day. She said, I'm sending you a script. You have an audition for a feature film.
Hmm.
And I think it was like the second film that I auditioned for. But prior to that, had done, commercials and auditioned for TV. So I didn't think it was a big deal. And a feature film could be anything as long as you have the budget. So again,
Hmm.
I wasn't thinking like Hollywood feature. I'm just thinking full length. And I get the script and I'm like, oh, okay, Black Cowboys, Philadelphia. That's interesting. And then somewhere in the back of my head, I was like, I remember reading something somewhere about Idris Elba doing a film in Philly, something about cowboys. I don't think they're related, whatever, Um, and then I went in, I did my audition, and then I got a call back. And at that point, I'm looking at the script, and I've heard now Idris Elba Black Cowboys movie in Philadelphia. So I'm like, I think this is the same movie. And then I'm looking and I'm like, now who is he gonna be? Because this this movie is about, a 15-year-old boy. So I'm like, well, obviously he's not playing the 15-year-old. So who's
Hmm.
he gonna play? I'm like, he must be playing the father. And I'm like, I think these lines are for the mother. And I'm like, well, that's great and all, but there's no way that they're going to cast an unknown actress with really no film credits to her name as the mother. So I was just thinking, well, maybe they're looking for an understudy or a stand in or something like that. So I was not even thinking about it. I really wanted the casting director who I had seen a couple times. I just wanted her to see me do something dramatic. So again, I was like, I'm not gonna get in this movie. I just want her to be impressed.
Hmm.
So I do the second callback, and then I get a call a couple days later. I got another call back, and at that point, I was like, "Hang on, am I really being considered for this in a serious way? Like, am I really up for this?" And they said, yeah, yeah. The director would like to meet you. He really likes you. Um, I know there was at least one producer, I don't know if there were more, who were like, well, maybe we should consider bringing in, Kerry Washington or somebody who's, a name. But the director was like, I really want to meet her. And so I went in a third time. I met with him, I did the audition, and I left, and I felt really good about it. But even still, I was like, it's Idris Elba. I mean, like, come on, they're not gonna give that to me. And then the next day, I got a call that I got the part, and I just like freaked out a little. It was like, what? So that's how I got involved. But it was very like, the whole time I was just thinking, well, yeah, but they're not, but like, who am I? They're not gonna hire me, really. But that's how I got in there.
Well, I'm listening to you tell that, and I'm thinking of a Woody Allen quote where it says 90% of success is just showing up. You you
It's so true.
you did all the right stuff. This time it paid off.
And it paid off, and it was a cool experience because, like I said, I think I took the pressure off of myself by saying I just want to impress the casting director. I think if I had really thought, oh, I'm really up for this, I would have psyched myself out or something. But I really, she's a wonderful woman. Diane Heary is her name, and she always calls me in for these happy mom type roles. I
Hmm.
call them Target moms or like Walmart moms. The who's ready for school. Like I do those roles in my sleep. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I really wanted her to see like, oh, she can do the crying and I was at that point in the script, she was written as like a drug addict and this very heavy. I think in the script it even said she looks like she's lived a hard life. And I was like, well, Diane Heary has never seen me look like I've lived a hard life. So I really just want to show her that. But I think if I had thought from the beginning, like, oh, they're really looking at me for this, I would have just psyched myself out and been like, ah, and then blown it and then been like, oh.
Oh,
So I'm
well,
glad I didn't do that.
yeah, no, it seems like you said you took the right path. You just did what you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
What happened happened. So, are you really to ask? Are you eager for this to happen? But if this is going to be your transition from stage to film, is this like a really good way to do it? Is this giving you some great opportunities?
I mean, theoretically, yeah. When we were shooting this, of course, COVID was not even a thought in our minds. So at that time, it was like, I hope this opens some doors. People will see me, and then they'll be like, "Ooh, let's call her in for something." Um, then, of course, the pandemic has put a lot of things on hold and shifted things, and so I know now what's going to happen. The hope is, of course, that people will see me and go, "Who's that? Let's
Mm-hmm.
let's hire her." But it depends now really on who sees it, how it gets seen, and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. And it's like I'm not a patient person. I hate waiting, and I've had to wait like extra long for this. So I'm really just like, I don't know. I hope so.
I hope so too. And for me, I think the pandemic is kind of like a giant boggle game where you just shake everything up and see where the pieces land at this point.
That's a really great description of it. That's exactly what it feels like. It's just like you can't predict anything.
No, and just like this, people have been seeing all sorts of bad things happen this year, but some weird good things have just kind of popped up.
True.
We don't expect it, and I think this could be one of those things.
I hope so. I mean, the one of the good things that I have found is that, this time at home, I mean, I have so much time at home. But I also write. And so this time at home has allowed me to really explore that avenue as well, which I'm very excited about. So, there's little blessings everywhere. That's what I'm learning about life. There's little blessings everywhere. So, and that's one of them. So I'm grateful for that because I've been writing for years. I've just never produced any of my own content. But now I'm in a position where I can actually do that. And then if the film does come out and do well, then maybe I'll be in a position where I can use that, to keep opening doors. But I really, I don't know. The boggle is such a great description of what we're going through right now. It's exactly what it feels like. And so I hesitate to even plan a little bit on anything because I'm like, well, you never know. 2 weeks from now, it could just be blah, blah, and you're like,
Right.
oh, okay.
No, I'm not asking to speculate. It's just I just think it's important to point out that possibility is there in ways that we haven't ever seen before.
True, true. And I don't really know yet what's happening with it, but my theory is, I mean, I don't know, I'm not an expert, but my theory is that, they would go with a streaming service, which, right now would be great. I mean, everybody's home. Everybody
Hmm.
has access to that. So it's like, you never know. I'm sure they'll figure out whatever way to make themselves the most money. But in the meantime, I'm just sort of over here like, okay, when's the movie coming out? you know, at this point, my friends and family are like, did you really do this movie, Liz? Did you really? Are you making it up? Did you Photoshop those pictures? I'm like, no, I swear.
Well, in a world where a weird guy on a tiger ranch becomes a sensation overnight because
Yeah,
we're all bored off our rear ends, this has got to have some potential.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, that's a good point. I hope so. But, in the meantime, I'm just trying to, make my rounds, try to promote. And I've been reading every review that I can get my hands on. Because, it was at the Toronto Film Festival a month ago. And then a week ago, it was at the Middleburg Film Festival, I think it's called.
Hmm.
So, it's still there. I guess they're still showing it places, which is cool. But yeah, every time they do, I just, I have so many Google alerts set for this now. But, every time a review comes out, I'm on it. I'm like, oh, what did they think? So it seems like the feedback is really positive too. So that's encouraging.
Yeah, I'm going to try to find as many of those reviews as I can and link them in the show notes because with the challenges you have, that it will be good for somebody interested to be able to get a feel for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, we talked very briefly on the phone a couple weeks ago when we were setting this, and uh, I'd like to talk. I told you a little bit about how what we do here, just talking about creativity, motivation, and if you're getting to write in your free time, a lot of people in the audience are doing that too.
Yes.
How's that been working out for you?
It's really lovely. Like I said, I mean, I've been writing since I was a teenager. And it's really just been the inspiration behind it was always I want to write the parts that I want to play that I haven't been able to play yet for whatever reason. Either the opportunity has not presented itself or I just haven't been cast as a part like that or something like that. But, you know, um, so I've been doing this for a long time. And then, with the pandemic and everybody kind of being in place, that opened up sort of the whole sort of online writing community to me for the first time because I never really explored it. To talk with a lot of fellow actor writers, um, and I've been able to link up with a few people who we kind of have similar writing styles, or there's like a project that a couple of us really want to work on. So I've been able to collaborate and then also write on my own. But it's been a really lovely experience. I was, of course, completely terrified to show anybody my work. Because for me it's fine, but when you give your work to someone to look at and critique, it's like it's almost like your baby. You're kind of like, okay, be gentle.
Mhm.
Um, but it's been really great. I've learned a lot about script writing, and yeah, I have a few projects that we are now trying to get off the ground, trying to film. And there's multiple purposes for it. There's some that, I don't have an actor's reel at the moment, which is very unusual for someone in film. You need to have that. So I have a few scenes that are going on to my reel. So there's that. There's a few, I'm working on a web series that I'd love to film, get that up on YouTube or some other kind of platform like that. And then I'm also working on a few screenplays, but one in particular that I'm really kind of pushing myself to complete. And we have a few scenes that some actor friends and I are going to be filming. Um, but it makes you feel very, what's the word? I don't know. I feel very accomplished in a way that I don't think I've ever felt. Because for me, acting was always something I wanted to do since I was a child, but I never really considered myself as a writer seriously until this all happened. So I am enjoying that process. I really do. I love writing. It takes me hours, but I love it. I can set aside a few hours a day to just sit with, I play jazz music when I'm doing it, and and really just kind of throw myself into these stories. And again, it's usually parts that I want to play. So in that sense, it's also exciting because I'm like, if I get this completed and I, link up with the right people, there's no reason why I can't play this part as I've written it. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of really great stuff involved with writing, especially when you're writing a part for yourself. So I'm loving it. I hope I get to do more of it. It's kind of making me think that, maybe if this movie opens doors and I get to, do a few more projects down the road, I would love to maybe then start a production company of my own and produce content and star in my own content and do that. So, and that's not something I ever really considered until 2020. So, yeah.
It's amazing that that's even possible now, whereas even just a few years ago, the complexity made it insane to even suggest that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, in that way doors are opening, which is very unexpected in the middle of everything that's going
Mhm.
on. So, yeah, that's definitely a big silver lining for me. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Again, I hope the movie coming out
Mhm.
is able to then also help facilitate the writing, and it's all connected, but we'll see what happens. I
Well,
don't
it's
know.
it's bet you have multiple related talents, a talent stack, if you will. That's
Mhm.
a lot of people don't get that. That if they think they have to be good at one particular thing, and if they're the best at that, they've got it made. But
Right.
what if you're just pretty good at that? but you can be pretty good at a lot of things.
You can be pretty good at a lot of things. I mean, I've been saying, um, so people here in Philadelphia, where I'm from and where I, was born and raised, I tell them about this movie and they're shocked because nobody nobody from my hometown knows me as an actress. They
Hmm.
all know me as a singer, like an opera singer or a musical theater singer. They're just not like when I first kind of was on my social media about this film coming out, people were like, "Wait a minute, wait a minute. Liz is an actor? Is she still singing?" Like, um, yeah, you can have definitely multiple talents. And it's funny, this was like a bone of contention between myself and my parents years ago when it was like, time to figure out what I wanted to go to college for. Because for them, college was absolutely you're going, you know?
Hmm.
Um, but I remember we had a discussion where, they really pushed for me to go into opera or into to music or into singing, really. And my parents are very religious. So for them, it was like, we don't want you to waste the gifts that you've been given, right? But I remember I said to them, how did I phrase this? I said, well, you guys believe in God, right? If you really do believe that I was given this talent, what's to stop you from thinking that I may have been blessed with more than one talent? You know what I mean? Like very rarely do you ever just get the one talent, especially if it's in the arts. Usually artistic people have several, and maybe there's one prominent one and then the other stuff is, hobbies or interests. But that desire to do more than one thing, I think if you think the one is divine, I think they can all be divine. You know what I mean? So I
Hmm.
said to them, I said, look, they're all related. They're all artistic. I don't want to use this particular talent to make a living. Doesn't mean I'm leaving it behind or not using it. I'm using another talent as my career choice. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, I think, like when I went to college and I studied musical theater, the idea was I know I'm going to be doing films eventually, maybe years down the line, and yes, years down the line. But um, I said it will make me a more well-rounded performer and a well-rounded person if I can explore multiple avenues as opposed to just the one. So I studied dance, I studied music, I studied, theater, I studied directing, I studied acting in front of the camera, I studied all the different things that I can still use as a performer now, even though I'm focusing on just this one area right now. So yeah, I hope I get to use all my talents at different times. But for me, the acting has always been the passion. You know what I mean?
I do. I really do. And like you said, it's all connected. You're all coming from the same basic talent. You're just
Hmm.
expressing it in different ways. And um, it's one of those things that when you're working on something like this, when you have to wear a bunch of different hats. The idea that we're so specialized is a pretty unique and kind of a modern idea that doesn't go back to the older days of theater, of music, of acting.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, yeah, that's exactly it. If you go back, you look at, the most prominent performers in history, they were rarely one note talents. They
Hmm.
usually had talents in several different areas or whatever, because that was what was expected. I mean, you go back to like the vaudeville days, these were not just, getting up there doing monologues. They were up there singing, dancing, telling jokes, all the different kinds of things that go into being a performer. So yeah, I think it is all connected and I love it. And I'm lucky that I get to use my different talents in pretty much everything I do. I mean, I just did an audition the other day for I think it was for like the Maryland lottery for a commercial, and I'm singing in the, I mean, it's like their Christmas Carol, how the Christmas Carol lottery commercials happen. It was something like that. And I was like, they were like, can you please sing? Yeah, sure, no problem. You know what I mean? So I'm still using that talent, different way, but I'm still using it. So
I was talking to a comic artist on an earlier episode, and the point came up that in almost every other area of life, whenever you choose a career, you get asked if you can do something, and you have to think, can I do that? Am I lying if I say no? Is this going to get me in trouble if I answer wrong? With the arts, you are asked if you do something, and you say yes, and you figure out how later.
Exactly. That's what they taught us in college, because it'll say it probably says on my IMDb that I'm a dancer. I've been trained in dance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would necessarily call myself a dancer, but I was trained that when you go into an audition and they say, "Can you stay for the dance call?" You better say yes. You know what I mean? Even if you're not a dancer, you better say yes, And in the beginning, it was always like, sure, and then I'd be like, stop doing that. The whole point of the audition is to show the confidence that you walked in the door with, So me going, I don't know, I'm sure, I was like, cut that out. Can you stay for the dance call? Sure can. Yeah, I can. And then you leave the room and go, okay, how am I going to do this? Okay. But, you got to say yes if you want the job.
There's no corollary to that elsewhere outside the arts, which is why I find it so fascinating.
It's true. I mean, you know what? And even for this movie, they asked me at the last audition, can you ride a horse? Now, that's probably the only exception in this industry that I've heard. Do not say yes if you cannot ride a horse, because too many horror stories of people showing up on set and then being like, oh. So they asked me, can you ride a horse? I said, well, I've been on a horse once in my life, so I've done it. I hope they weren't going to ask after that, and they didn't. Because the time that I had been on a horse was like 10 years prior. And I was like, a teenager. So I didn't want to tell them like, yeah, I totally ride horses. But I also didn't want to be like, nope, can't do it. So I said, well, I've been on one, so I can do it. Then after I got the part, I called them and I said, can I possibly get horse training? Because I have, but not recently. Can I? And they were like, yeah, sure. But, you say yes when it's important. You say yes so that you can get the job. And yeah, exactly like you said, you figure it out after.
So let's about the movie itself. Since you're from Philadelphia and you're talking about an East Coast story, I'm originally from the East Coast. I live in Oklahoma now.
Okay.
What kind of response have you gotten to the concept of the story? Because I think there's going to be two different responses here.
Yeah, it's interesting. So overwhelmingly so far, the one thing I'm getting is people are super interested in the story because they, like me, had no idea that it was true. That's probably the biggest response I'm getting. And it's true. I didn't know that this was a real community until after I got cast in the movie. And in fact, at my costume fitting, I said, so this is a fantasy story, right? And they were like,
no,
it's not, So I'm getting a lot of people going, wait, so is this real? Wait, that's a real thing. Wait a minute, those are real cowboys? Yes. I'm getting a very small percentage of people who are like, so how come a white director is telling the story? Which I think is a very interesting question. But again, very small percentage that I'm getting. I think maybe two people have asked me that question. But for the most part, the response I'm getting is, wait a minute, that's real? Where? Wait a minute, really? Which I'm excited about. I'm hoping that's the big response when people see it, is that they're like, hang on, are there groups like this in my city? Because the answer is probably yeah, most likely. You know what I mean? So that I'm hoping is consistent when the movie gets released.
Sure. Because living back east, you would hear the story and you would have that reaction that, wow, I can't believe this. And yet, here in Oklahoma City, you wouldn't see that every day.
Mm-hmm.
But when you did see it, you wouldn't do a double take. You'd be like, okay, one of those dudes. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the director tells the story about when he was here. And he's not from here, but he was here for almost a decade, and he's driving down Center City, Philadelphia, one day in a cab, and out the window, some guy on a horse rode by, and he was like, "Hang on, stop the cab. What is that?" And then followed the guy back to the stables and had conversations with him, and that's where the story idea was kind of born. But I'm Philly born and raised. This is my first experience with the Black Cowboys in Philly. I had no idea it was a thing until I got in this. And the sad thing is, I mean, they've been around forever. They've been around since the Civil War. It's just that they've been so whitewashed out of history that people just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's kind of stunning when you think about it. When you do the deep dive and really research it and start reading about the stories and the history, you're like, holy crap, this is real. Like, oh my goodness, this is Philly in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Well, the idea that we left horses behind the second the automobile was invented is really doesn't show a great knowledge of history.
Yeah. It's it is sad in a way, in that sense. And it's funny because you're the first person that's even brought that correlation up, that once we got into automobiles, that whole, side of transportation was completely left in the dust. That's a really good point. It's weird. I mean, you think about, like, I did a little bit of research after I got cast. Once I found out, oh, this is a real thing, I was like, I should probably read up on this. It's actually really surprising to me how big a part Hollywood had to play in changing that narrative, because once Hollywood really started making their westerns, the John Wayne movies, all those, it was like there was like a whole push to turn that narrative into a white stereotype, like the white cowboy that we all think of when you think of the term cowboy. But the automobile industry, I would say between that and Hollywood, they did a number on history in a way, for sure. For sure.
Absolutely. And so people were using horses in wars up until the middle of the 20th century. And I mean, whenever it was practical, sometimes that is easier to maintain a car or a truck with oil and gasoline and rust, or just a horse where you give it oats and water and you're good.
And you're good. Yeah.
And a pinch, which would you rather be on?
I mean, I'd choose the horse. Now that I've been on one recently, I'm like, there's such, it's almost frightening how big they are when you're standing next to like a real big, war horse, for example. Because like the horse that I was near was actually the horse that Caleb McLaughlin used most of the film, and it was a lot smaller, and it was like, I mean, it was big, but to me it was like, oh, it's so beautiful. And then you get up to the horse that Idris used for the entire movie, and I think it was one of the horses from, gosh, I can't remember, but it was used in a war movie as well. So it's this massive animal. I mean, and the muscles, it's incredible when you get up close to it. You're just like, imagine running into the side of this thing. It's like smacking into a brick wall. I personally, I would choose a horse almost every time over a vehicle. I think that there's something just innately majestic and beautiful about horses. That being said, I had a hard time staying upright on the horse. So I'd probably have to take a few more lessons before I could be like, all right, I'm ready to ditch the car, go on the horse. It's funny, my neighbors here where I'm at, I'm just outside of Philly. I'm in a suburb. And down the street, my neighbors have horses. They have a little stable in their yard, and when you drive by, there's horses in their front yard. And I'm always just like, that is amazing. You know?
So it sounds like this movie would change your perspective on a lot of things.
Hmm. For sure. For sure. It changed my perspective on, yeah, a lot of things, on history, on animals, on the industry. You know, I was fortunate to spend some time, some downtime with, you know, some of the stars of this film. And, you know, you hear stories about like never meet your heroes, and like, you know, you run into celebrities and they're just big jerks or whatever. And then this experience was just like, it was so beautiful and wonderful. And like, you know, you show up and the cowboys are sitting around a circle in a campfire, just like chilling. And there's Idris, and there's Method Man, and there's Caleb, and they're just all, you know, freestyle rapping and talking with the cowboys. And you just kind of sit there going like, this is amazing. Like, this is so cool. Um, yeah, it changed my perspective on that. And I'll say it changed my perspective on the city of Philadelphia itself. I didn't know this was a thing going on here. I love that it's going on here. This is a place, you know, these stables are places where, you know, they're designed to keep our kids off the street, teach them practical skills, how to take care of an animal, how to be responsible. And you really do start from the ground up. You don't even get on a horse for like, I don't know, the first year or so, because you got to learn how to shovel the poop, how to clean the animal, how to do, you know, all these other things. Um, and I, you know, like I said, I didn't know that was happening here, and I love that. Um, and getting to see people in North Philly coming out of their houses to watch us film, like that was an incredible thing. So yeah, it did. I think it changed my perspective on a lot of things, for sure.
Okay, well, Liz, I would love to talk a little bit more about that, and I know it's going to be hard to get a hold of you down the road, but maybe at some point you and I can swing back together and have a chat about the history
Yes,
and that sort of thing.
absolutely. I'd love to come back.
May-
Absolutely.
Maybe after I catch the movie, wherever I can find it, and have a little more frame of reference.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, when it finally comes out, I would love to, you know, touch base with you, hear what your thoughts are and your
I
responses and everything. Yeah.
I would love to give them, but from what you know, where can people follow the movie and where can they follow you online?
From what I know, the best place to follow the movie would probably be imdb.com. That's where I'm keeping up with everything. Um I was gonna say the Wikipedia page, but there's some inaccuracies on that page, so don't go to it. I would say follow it on imdb.com. That's probably where information on it will be updated, the most regularly. But you could also follow me on imdb.com under Liz Priestley, or you can find me on Facebook under Liz Priestley. That's it. I don't have any other social media accounts. I'm sure that'll change, but I'm very boring, so I'm like, I don't have like an Instagram or anything yet. But Facebook or IMDb, those are probably your best bets.
Well, I will go ahead and link all that in the show notes on aaronbossig.com, and
Cool.
I will keep adding to it as time goes on. It's a living document, so as things come up, if I find a way to link people directly to the movie, I will do that to make it easier for them. Liz,
Awesome.
thank you so much for being here. I would love to have you back sometime soon.
Thank you so much. I'd love to come back. Thank you, Aaron.
Take good care.
Alrighty.